did you know you were writing a book, or was it, hey, I just need to get these thoughts out, or did you know like, nah, I'm gonna put this together, and this is gonna be something?
No, I knew. I mean, it was because when I decided, hey, I need to write this book, it was because I had probably 4 chapters that I wanted to write before I even started writing the first chapter.
I'm here with the one and only Dorian Adams. Absolute pleasure to have the chance to chop it up with you here, brother, and just get into this. Had the pleasure a couple months back of reading your first book, He is Able, and I've been real excited to be able to have a conversation with you about this and just understand a bit more about what went into this work. And so, Dorian, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
I mean, just a basic, regular guy that happened to have some really interesting events take place over the course of my life, and at some point I decided to, I was compelled to put together what you find in the book. Just said go for it, Just I wanted to share that experience with people, because I don't think a lot of the sentiment that I expressed in my book is stuff that people will even take advantage of having experienced and sharing it with people, unless it's a lot of times it's like I gotta pull teeth to get this type of information out of a person.
Right.
Me being a man, especially men, we probably can identify with situations that it's taboo for us to talk about. It's taboo for us to be vulnerable about real stuff that happened with us, and we kind of file away the happening of that experience and deal with it ourselves.
Let me stop you there. You touched on vulnerability. Mm-hmm. The first thing that jumped out to me as I read this book was the decision you made to come with it 100% raw and real. What I want to understand is, when did you make that decision? I mean, there's different ways to write a book. There's different ways to tell your story and, capture that. When did you make the decision that, hey, if I'm going to write something, it's going to be the unedited, raw version of this?
That's a good question. I like that. I decided to express based on my genuine understanding of the stuff that went on with me, in order to allow myself to access those dark places and those dark thoughts that I carried around with me for a long time. And I know those are some of the things that it's other men, other boys, other kids potentially going through, that the only way for me to reach them in their moment of that same, dealing with that same struggle or that same pain, is through identification. If you ain't feeling me, we can't even have a conversation about some stuff that you've been carrying around half of your life or all your life. So if you willing to peel the layers of that onion, it's gonna start with somebody being real with you.
Right.
And so that just set the stage for me to say my story or express my experience, and then take it in the direction that I needed to go.
Literally like pen and pad, or you just bust out the laptop, or
No.
How did all this start? Was this like journals?
All on paper.
On paper?
All on paper, man. I got the books and everything. I still got them. So the transition
you gotta show some shots of that.
Yeah, the transition from the writing of it didn't happen until I knew I was about finished, and I started to load it up into a manuscript form onto my laptop. Mm-hmm. So I literally went through each chapter. First I had a couple of chapters, I'll show it to you, that I had a dog, and my ex's daughter was playing tug with the dog with my book, and ate up some of the pages. So I had to literally come from memory to remember what I had wrote in those chapters. This is my story, was just about putting the words in whatever position. Yeah. But yeah, so
that's wild.
And I'm solid.
Yeah, you solid. That's wild. I've heard it said, it's like, hey, this book, this content, whatever the situation is, this isn't for everyone, you know. But for the ones who understand, for the ones who are coming from where I'm coming from, you know, they gonna understand, and it's gonna be real, and it's gonna connect. What I want to understand is getting to that place. You talked about going through and reliving some of those moments, some of those dark times. Talk to me about that process. You know, I'm sure there were points that didn't even get discussed in the book, but you know, the points that you were recapping on some of those stories. What did it take to actually get back to that place? Like, was that a tough process, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, man. So you getting somewhere with this now. You waking something up. So how I got back to that was through becoming more conscious of my creator, and the fact that none of that stuff was by chance that happened to me. So basically it was almost like me sitting back at some point and beginning to connect the dots between situation upon situation of life, near life or near death experiences that I could no longer ignore, that it wasn't by my hand, it wasn't by my choice or design that I made it through those situations. So it's like, okay, God set this all up.
Right.
And I zoomed out, like I said, and I was able to move the pieces of the puzzle in position to say, it's the only reason why this even happened. So now, with all due respect, add it all up.
Right.
These things happen in order for you to go closer and more intimate with your creator. This is just your story. Everybody's story ain't the same. But for me, that's what it took. That was the beginning of me being able to now connect each dot with the fact that he was controlling and moving these situations into position for me to recognize him on a deeper level. Instead of just saying, I go to church, I study this, I do that. But hey, this is real life. This is happening right now to you.
Right.
And you're being drawn to something else.
Absolutely. As you read the book, you feel this sense of, I love how you said that, being drawn, right? Being carried. And, you know, when you talk about this formula and things adding up, in each chapter, especially when you start talking about thought evolution, that becomes very clear. It becomes very clear that you're moving towards this concept called purpose, called there's something greater than myself that has me here and that's sustaining me. I want to hear you share a bit on what does this concept of purpose really mean for you? Because as I read your book, that's what I'm hearing. That's the heartbeat. There's a greater plan and there's a purpose for myself. What's this concept of purpose mean for you?
Purpose, if I'm being totally honest, is me acknowledging and accepting that I was put here for a reason. But one thing about purpose is that people claim purpose all the time. Yeah, that's my purpose, this is my purpose. And it took you how long to realize that? So you just came to a conclusion that you was gonna say this is your purpose. But you still living day after day and you're being woke up, not against your will, but without your say so.
Yep.
You being woke up. So each day is a new day in which you can actually reinvent yourself. You can choose not to participate on certain levels. But if you're actively and consciously seeking what your purpose may be, it's going to manifest on a daily basis. Because your purpose might be in the day and in the moment. It may not be, I'm just here to be a mechanic. That may not, you know what I mean? You can claim that as your purpose, but in the act of you even saying that's your purpose, your actual purpose in the moment might just be to share a smile with the person standing next to you. It might be to give this mother of 4 or 5 people, kids, a break on their service. Right? And so the evolution of purpose happens every day. You know, bringing that content, the value. Because I'm not a writer like that. I just knew I had a story to tell. I knew I had to draw some experiences in the focus that would allow me to say the bigger parts.
Right.
You know, so that was kind of, those chapters really were kind of qualifiers.
100%, yeah. Or qualifying it. That's real. It's like you gotta, it's like boxing in a sense, you gotta, like setting up your punch or strategy.
Right, yes. All of this really don't make sense until you see why I'm seeing it.
Right. So let me hold that thought right there. Looking at this evolution of purpose, and it's very clear in the book, but that would mean your purpose today may be different than what that focus was 5-10 years ago, 5-10 years before that, and
absolutely.
You're seeing the progression, you're seeing the growth over time.
Absolutely.
Walk us through some of those main times where you clearly saw that purpose, and you know you don't get to an outcome like where you are right now without pieces coming together and adding up. They don't necessarily add up in the time you expect, in the way you expect,
right.
But in hindsight, you look back and you see those pieces adding up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on just maybe different points of purpose along the path that you believe has brought you to where you are right now.
So I'm gonna break it. I'm gonna break it into a few tidbits. So where I'm gonna go with this, if I'm understanding your question, is for real. I can remember times, and I'm sure I expressed some of this in my book, where my purpose that I thought was to commit as much havoc, run my own, and I know I spoke to it in the book that I groomed the people around me in that same fashion. Right? And I can remember it just, you know, because it's just so close to me. It's almost like that I can touch, remembering the feeling that came with that, remembering the state of mind I was in that came with that, right? And then I talked about darkness and, you know, going on that path of saying, okay, yeah, I'm really finna, you know, I care about nothing but committing havoc and XYZ, all of the above. But if you would, you got a copy of my book. Let me show you something I want to read some out of this when you talking about how that evolution of thought is in sprinkled in throughout the book. Give me a second. If I can find. See.
Not to break your stream of thought on that, I'd love to hear you touch on what inspired you to put in the evolution of thought segments in your book, because those were gems. Those were absolute buried treasure.
That was the I feel like kind of the meat and potatoes that connected, like we talked about a minute ago, the pieces of the puzzle. As I'm looking at the pieces of the puzzle, it was his hand controlling all of this, and it just made it so clear to me that in each instance, my thought, like you just referenced, was evolving.
Yeah.
My purpose was evolving, so I'm shifting and I'm shifting and I'm shifting. But this brings me to my point about reading this part for you out of the book. And this is an evolution of thought right here. Okay? So it says, evolution of thought. There have been times in my life when almost any choice I made or contemplated that didn't initially include God caused some pretty heavy anxiety. The time I spent at Pelican Bay was one of those. Sure, I went about my daily activities as usual. I did my exercises, talked to people, and played cards to pass the time. But at no time was God far away from my thoughts. It's as if he always had my full attention. Part of it was the reality in which I was living. All around me were men, many serving double and triple digit sentences, which most didn't see being free again in their futures. And though regular stuff always happened, the threat of danger or death lurked around every corner and could take place instantly. I felt like God was using this time to help me understand that without him, there is no future. Just like without him, there is no now. God was and still is using the steps in my life to shape me into the image of what I'm to become. Much like the caterpillar and its mind-blowing metamorphosis to becoming a butterfly, God has taken me from one stage of development to another again and again. I am now content with my understanding that this metamorphic process will continue to happen for all my days. So the evolution of thought speaks to just how God will take you through that metamorphic process, just like a caterpillar to a butterfly, is the same in which you can sit here and say, yeah, I'm OG, or yeah, I'm a swimmer, or yeah. You're claiming purpose right there.
Right.
But God keeps you in a constant state of metamorphosis because he's taking you to where you go, where you need to be next.
Yeah.
And where you need to be next doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going to always be. You're becoming. When he wake you up in the morning, you're still becoming. So that's my take on it.
Had you read anything that gave you like inspiration? Like, man,
No.
I see how that person told their story, and
Not at all. So, backstory.
I just moved that.
You want to move it again, man? But so backstory is, and it's crazy because it's these guys that go to my gym, some gangbangers, right?
Really?
Yeah. And I gave one of the guys a copy of the book. And he read, he's like, he's blown away. So they got a crew of about 5, 6 guys that come in every day at the same time together. The one that I gave the book to, when we first talked about it, he said, man, bruh, he laid something on me about his life. And I said, bro, you need to write a book. You need to write your story. Because what he was saying is that he went through some stuff and he made some changes, right? And in making those changes, he was greeted with, while I was, basically his story was when I was doing some negative stuff, running the streets. I got praised for being successful in that lane, right? And he said, I decided to make a change. It was a religious change. And he's getting his life together and he's on his same on his 2 feet. They act like they don't know him. They don't give him no props, like, so to speak. It's like, if I'm out here risking my life about to get killed, I'm your best nephew.
Right.
Right? So anyway, he had read it and stuff like that, and now he's sharing it with his buddies. And they asked me the other day, one of them said, man, like, because they was together, he said, what's up with the book, man? You know, this and that. And he said, man, my cousin been telling me that he loved the book, and he always be raving over the book and this and that. And he said, well, what made you write a book, man? Like, and I said, man. So like I said, leading up to the backstory, I didn't tell them this. But one thing that made me write the book was when I was in youth authority, and we was on lockup. We had a riot, right? So we on lockup. So me and my boy T, we was in the book. So this was back when the chapter of me getting hit over the head with the pipe happened.
Yeah.
So this was lockup. That was in a lockup about 6 months before that, for something we did, right? But anyway, they would write books. They would write little 10-page books and stuff like that. And I'm sitting up there thinking to myself, like, bro, if you gonna do it, like, you know. But I wasn't there with it at the time. And so what ended up eventually happening is that, well, honestly, this is my second book. The first book I wrote was called Money Plush. And it was all about street life and doing all. It was made up, right? And so it never got published. I never went, you know, and it was a lot more than that. It was about 200 and something pages, right? But it got caught up, me running the streets and living from place to place and all of that stuff. So it never saw the light of day, which I'm kind of glad about, because this was something that needed to be done and it's providing a value.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah.
People saying the new birth.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? So
that's beautiful.
Right?
No, that's absolutely beautiful, and it just speaks to what a lot of folks coin as a growth mindset. Understanding that I haven't arrived. You know, we're in a process of overcoming and becoming, and God is guiding and using these situations in your life to mold you to whatever that end product is going to be. You know, we gonna go day in, day out, and, you know, by the time we die, you know, hopefully get there. But now that's beautiful. On that topic, it reminds me a lot of what you'll hear people say. You're blessed to be a blessing, right? You've gone through some experiences, and it gives you this thing called insight, right? You develop this evaluated experience, and I love exactly how you put it. You know, speaking about the havoc you've caused, and, you know, self-proclaimed caused over the years. The way you put it is, if I can just give back some of what I took from life, I might be okay. How have you seen, or you can even take it from this angle, how would you hope this book impacts some of the people that experienced some of the things you experienced. Even, you know, if there's situations where people that are referred to in the book have had the opportunity to be impacted by this, I'd love to hear what that was like, or what would you want those individuals to take away from reading this?
I guess to begin to try to answer that, I would say that my foremost want, if that book is going to touch somebody to do something, the first thing I wanted to do, this is just my want, because the thing about it is that God compelled me to write that book. It wasn't a me show. It was me on display. But it wasn't about me. It was about, if I can get somebody's attention in their moment, wherever they at, as they read that, because that's personal. You're not reading this. It's not like a big, you're going to sit and read a book, or you're going to podcast it or whatever. It's one-on-one. You're getting that, whatever you're extracting out of that, you're getting it for yourself.
Yeah.
Much like my understanding of the relationship one should have with God. It's personal. So as that person reads the book, if it sparks them, if it wakes something up in them to say, hey, this is the thing, first thing first, if a person ain't being real with themselves, that's just gonna be words on paper. But if that person's soul is seeking and they're searching to find something, they looking for opportunity to change where they at, shift, seek a new direction, they can look at the stuff in those pages. And if they identify with me being bare bones, honest, and vulnerable with the stuff that I've been through, if they can identify with that, they may just use that book to say, hey, I'm going to look at what I'm doing, or what do I need to do to connect with the source that got me here. If you don't have one, find one, you know, and begin doing some work in that direction. That's all I can ask for. God gonna do the rest.
Right.
He gonna do the rest. So, you know, I know that my spirit was so lost, and I was in so much turmoil. At times in that book, you got the chapter bingo in there, speaks to me specifically being in under the influence of drugs, crack, running from the cops, beating up people, like, and that was my existence. In that chapter, I had been up at least 2 days, right? I'm in a really funky state of mind, right? And I know it's people out there who might have been through that, came out of it, however they did, might be in it, wishing they could be out of it. They get a chance to read that book, they might see, yeah, this guy pulled himself out of it. It was a reason for him to come out of that, because many times through that book, I talk about instances where I should have been dead.
Right.
It can happen. That's my wish, my hope, my desire. Do you know if I could just plead that to people hearing this, watching this interview? That's what I want to see happen.
Right.
Because it can. It's not a pipe dream. So.
No, that's real. Talk to me about that a bit. Getting out of that situation, and as I look at your career, you know, professional bodybuilder, you know, you don't create that kind of result without being willing to experience and go through pain. Much of what's talked about in the book is, yes, physical pain as well, emotional, spiritual also. I'd love to hear your perspective on someone who is going through pain, you know, whatever category that is. What's the first step? What do they need to know?
Going through pain, you're in that turbulent turmoil.
They're in it and they maybe don't know they need to get out, but they come to that realization they need to change. What do they need to know?
That person needs to know. Let's see. First and foremost, if you ain't %100% defeated, if you're not 100% convinced that, especially if you're in that situation, it's self-manufactured. Mm-hmm. First of all, it ain't your mama, she didn't do it. It ain't your cousin because they mad at you. It's none of these people. It's not the police because they keep chasing you. They keep chasing you because you keep running because you did something you didn't have no business doing. When that person gets totally defeated to the point where they know they just got to be still and receive some information. Basically, the saying that comes to my mind it resonates. When the student is ready, the teacher's going to appear. So you can play that lip service, tell the people that you burned last week that you ain't going to do it no more. You can do that all day long. People closing doors in your face, and you know what I mean? You nasty and you stanky and you funky all at the same time because you keep doing what you're doing. That can change. Socrates once said, in the span of 10 days, a man who is considered a beast will be considered a prince. And that hit me, that hit home when I first read that. I was reading the book of Socrates' work. In the span of 10 days, a man who's considered a beast will be considered a prince. So that's just how fast stuff can shift and change to where the person that you are now, evolution, there we have it once again, evolution, your purpose just changed because right now, you gotta move based on your purpose. What set of circumstances you've created right now. You can't deny that. But when you decide to make that change, it may seem like a heavy lift right now. But they say the best way to eat an elephant even is one bite at a time. So you gotta be willing to step into that process with some integrity, hold your line, don't give no steps back, and continue that process. The people that are pulling for you, they're gonna show up because when the student's ready, the teacher's gonna appear. So you're gonna have more help in getting you back up off of your butt, pulling your boots up, getting your steps right than you probably would even imagine. But it's gonna first start with you. Your initial thoughts and actions in that direction is gonna snowball in the direction you want to go, but you can't look back and you can't give up no ground.
Right. Now, what are people's reactions like? Like, do you ever, I'll just share with you my reaction. When I read it, I was like, how could this be the same cat? Like, I was not picturing that you came from that background at all. Like, had no idea. No idea. Are people generally surprised when they read that?
I can't say, man. I know I've had responses like, wait, what? And that's understandable. But I think a big reason for that is that, no, that's you. A big reason for that is that people, they don't look to acknowledge the stuff that they've been through.
Right.
Just the same has a value to it. And it's not just to be frowned upon and never looked back upon and never talked about. And yeah, I weathered this storm and I'm past it. So it's it's a jump off point for people who willing to have that conversation. The difference between them and me is that I understand the value of that. And I'm ready to take it there because of the fact that not only did I make it through that, and I know it's a reason for that, I know at the same time that what you're going through could be temporary as well, and you're probably holding on to some shit that you don't need to hold on to,
Right.
right? That you could free yourself from if you're just willing to be vulnerable and transparent. And at the same time, I understand that what you going through or what you went through wasn't necessarily meant to crush you, which is why it didn't. It might have been meant for you to experience something that you can help somebody avoid experiencing if you open your mouth and allow yourself to use that, the value of what you have, and share it with somebody.
Those are some nuggets right there. That's pure gold. That's pure gold. And I want to talk a bit about the process of this all. You talked about, in making change, it's one bite at a time. Obviously, writing this book is one bite at a time, and the reality of it is not every bite gets in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How did you go through the process of deciding what was going to make it on these pages?
Right.
I know there were some experiences that were left out. Are there any particular experiences that you wish you would have added to this book?
No. No. It's not none that I wish I would have added, because what I was compelled to write, like I said, it wasn't me writing. It wasn't the me show. And so I have a bunch of stuff that I could have wrote that would have probably sufficed. Man, and I think about stuff all the time. I think I'm drawing a blank kind of on right now some of the different stuff that, like I said, would have been a story that would have just went in there perfectly. Just so a lot of the stuff that I've seen. So I would take an instance when I saw a guy. I'm running around doing my thing, and I saw a guy jump out of I was sitting in my car. It's about 7 a.m. Guy walks across the street. This lady standing at the fence talking to somebody else. Her back's turned. The guy that's walking across the street has a bat, and he literally laid into this lady could have been 20 licks with the bat. She's defenseless. He walks away. And not to say that that was so mind-blowing at the time, because that was the element I was in. But just to say, look how profound that is. When I say it right now, it even stands out as wow. But when I look back at that, and I say to myself, look at the trajectory. Look at how easily that could have been me, because it didn't matter what the lady did or whatever. It was the approach and the manner in which the guy that committed the assault did what he did. He could have just as easily killed her. Right? Somehow, and here we go once again with me putting the pieces of the puzzle together about that evolution and how God is running stuff. Somehow, the fatal blow didn't get delivered. She was actually able to get up and walk away. I feel like primarily or mostly because she was probably on a bunch of dope. She probably didn't feel it as much, and I'm like, you'll feel it tomorrow. But she walked away. Different experiences. Being shot at, and just those bullets not hitting me. The Pelican Bay incident, right? That had to go in there. That was what a lot of people don't know. That was my second trip to Pelican Bay. The first trip to Pelican Bay, I was in the SHU program. A lot of people probably heard of the SHU. 23-hour-a-day lockdown. You go outside to the yard, which is a courtyard, probably as big as this room we're sitting in, a little bit more. And you don't even get to see the sunlight over your head because it's a fiberglass covering over it, because it rains so much in that region of the state. that they got that there to block you from getting rained on every time. And then there's about a 5-foot opening in case the sun's shining, that you'll be able to get that much sunshine while you're out there for that hour. And the cops is in there opening people's doors, and everybody's the automatic enemy if they ain't your specific teammate. So they creating these conflicts. So just saying, that could have went in the book, right? And so much more. I just felt like those experiences moved me, and I didn't want to get on a soapbox about, I survived this, I survived that. It wasn't really about that. It was just about saying, man, guess what? You know, in this moment, when I think back on it, I really am drawn at how there was no other place to turn to acknowledge how I was making it through, how this was even possible that I was in this situation, and literally didn't have an idea how I was gonna make it out. Some of them happened so fast, I didn't have time to think that thought, but when I thought back on it, I could say it was no way, no other way. It was nothing that I did to get me out of there. Sitting in that situation, like I talked about in the Pelican Bay chapter, yeah, like I say, men all around me, most of them serving double and triple digit sentences, life sentences. They ain't got nothing to lose. I'm in there with something to lose. I had a few months left. Then the riot happens, right? And these jokers is going for blood. I got stabbed like 13 times, right? So guess what? Even making it out of that situation wasn't a given, but he pulled me out of that to see another day. Absolutely. And at what point is you gonna sit there and keep saying, yeah, I did that, and just come out with your chest poked out, let's go, let's go, let's go. I wasn't built like that. Sometimes people, you are in a situation. I was in that situation, but other people in that situation, they were of that situation because they're going to be there. This is lifelong, right? So just like I say, taking all of that into context and saying, what is your purpose? What are you doing?
Right.
If you make it out of this, you know, if you be in that situation, man, I ain't going to do that no more. God was trying to get my attention on a level to say, not only should you acknowledge that you're not going to do it no more, but acknowledge that I got something else for you to do. So all of those activities, the stuff that I have been doing, is like, how can I do what he want me to do if everything that I'm doing involves me almost getting killed? So that was the setup, and he knocked the rest down. All I had to do was open the door to him and submit, surrender. You know, I was talking to my mom about how you have a wealth that you don't even understand because you're not acknowledging it as such because you're so busy chasing what's next. And you're the culmination of a bunch of life experiences that everybody ain't gonna experience. If you share some of the stuff that you've been through and the processes of it, you could literally fill somebody's cup with just that, and they ain't even started trying to do what you did yet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just by being real about what you've been through and not being afraid to tell the story. People need to hear it.
Yeah. It's understanding the value of it. But
right.
If you don't feel like it's no value, right? Guess what? My car always junky. You don't feel like it's no value. The next person walking like, man, if I just had some wheels.
Or if you have a horrible attitude about it too, you know?
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you're not acknowledging that value, you know, man, just the same. That person that don't have it, they sitting there wishing.
Touched on a lot right there. uh, just this overwhelming understanding that God's pulling you through. It's not by your power. You said something very key as well. You were in that situation, but you weren't of that situation, right? You had more to live for and had expectations. What words would you have to folks who, whether it's coming from a similar situation or just feel that they're stuck in turmoil? What words would you have to them, encouraging them in making that change, understanding that there's going to be more for them than where they are? And like I said, it could be, you know, there's a lot of folks that's not an easy transition coming out. There could be folks that have never experienced that, but maybe they're trapped in, you know, whatever psychological confines they're putting on themselves.
There you go. Yeah.
Any practical perspective for them?
I mean, my approach to that is pretty much it's a blanket, almost a knee-jerk response. Because the first thing I'm doing if I say I'm in turmoil is inviting turmoil. I'm acknowledging that this is where I want to be at. The first thing I'm doing if I say I can't do this is I just claimed that over my life, over my ability to do something. So what I would need that person to do is find a way to claim victory over your life. I would need that person to find a way to be honest, open, and transparent enough with themselves to identify all, not one, not just a handful, but all of the narratives that they have embraced or been exposed to over time that builds them into the frame of mind that they're in, that they feel like they can't escape what they're doing or what they're dealing with. A lot of it's based on off-based and it's false narratives that don't really apply to you, but because you've never took the time to research this information, you feel like this is the only option that you have to looking at this situation. So in a sense, it's a control that you're exercising over something that you haven't even asked whether or not you need control over it. If you want to change, you can change. You don't need nobody's permission. But if I'm always fed this line, I use this thing talking to people just to acknowledge something that I'm just going to commonly accept. If all I've ever seen my mama do was cook cornbread in a big black skillet, when you ask me to make some cornbread, that's what I'm going to use. But if somebody come and cook some cornbread in a casserole dish, I'm looking at them like, what you doing? I'm going to try to tell them, this don't make no sense because this is all I've been exposed to.
Right.
So even in those instances where you never had a need to challenge what was going on, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yep.
But if you want something different, you got to be willing to do something different, right? And just, I mean, it's not even a forceful thing. Getting back onto the topic which you spoke about, it's not even that forceful. It's just the willingness. I mean, going back to being as defeated as ever, being totally crushed, destitute, whatever you want to call it, that will stop you in your tracks from continuing in the direction or the trajectory that you're going in. Because the end result of that, if I play the tape far enough ahead, I can see where I'm going.
Right.
And my next step is essentially going to lead me still in that direction if I continue to go that way. But if I say, that's it, this is it, I got to question everything that exists that has me to where I'm at, that I make my steps in this direction. So as soon as I pick my foot up, I got to calculate everything all of the whys attached to me walking in that direction.
Right.
And I got to break those down, right? Because of being a creature of habit, my nature now would compel me to go in that direction. But I got to check and question every single thing and say, you know what? It can't just be, like I said, it can't just be one or some or a handful. You got to be everything. You got to be willing to ask that question. Now, if you do the checks and balances and it don't apply, then you might be going in the right direction or a new direction. But until you're willing to do that, you don't even have a place to start from.
Right. This is powerful. I hope people taking notes. This is a little bit behind the scenes, being able to get into the mind of the author. This is absolutely powerful nuggets. I appreciate that, Dorian. It's not about skill; it's about will.
There you go.
And
yeah,
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what is next? Is there a possibility of a volume 2 or other ventures? I mean, as long as I've known you, making an impact and just like you said, living in your purpose each and every day has been what you're about. And so share with us what's on the horizon.
Man, I like that. I mean, you probably won't even know when I tell you how much I like that. What's next? In case in point, I had a conversation with a brother the other day. And I said, well, what you doing? I like to connect with strong minds, strong people. Well, yeah, I'm gonna work about a few more years and I'm gonna retire. Okay. I said, well, what you gonna do after that? What's next? Your question. So let me pause for a second. Confirmation